Here we go, everybody. Let's start. Now, I've started with a little bit of background. I think we all know that coaching is starting to become more and more trendy. Some of you know that we actually started this journey back in 2012. So we've been on this integrating coaching into education journey for a long, long time now. And for me, it really is a continuous evolution. So it doesn't just stop with what we've done so far. It is forever evolving, and I'm evolving with it. I'm still learning, and we'll be looking at the competences to see how that fits in with everything that we do. How many of you would agree with me that actually coaching in education, we could really say it's a dichotomy? Because on the one side, teaching is about giving instruction, giving information, telling, informing. And then the other side, coaching is about spontaneity. It's about sitting in the moment with the coachee. It's about dancing with that person. So how can we reconcile the two? Because they seem to be very polar extremes. Now, we are bridging that difference between the spontaneity and the directive. And actually, it was Ellis and Smith back in 2020 who did highlight this and did say that, coaching is non-directive. It is the not known. It is the waiting to discover. And teaching is the directive and showing the path and giving the questions. So we are learning to reconcile both of these so that they are both present in the learning process. How do we do that? Well, let's move into discovering it a little bit. Now, I also want to highlight that coaching has been in education for a long time now. It's not so new. We've had instructional and educational coaching, I would say, for about 20, 25 years, maybe in a different format. And what we are doing is actually doing it in a different way. Now, when we look at instructional coaching, we're mostly looking at coaching teachers. So you have either expert teachers who then become coaches, maybe headmistresses, headmasters, maybe people with a lot of experience in education who come in to actually coach teachers. And they're trying to help them to identify goals, identify issues, troubleshoot problems, bring in teaching strategies. So it's very much about making life easier for teachers to meet the needs of their students. Now, that's instructional coaching. And as you can see, there's been quite a lot of research on this, even back from 2007, even earlier than that, we have research on instructional coaching. And I'll just let you read those. I'm not going to read them out. But here we can see that definitely it's looking at the impact on teachers to then impact the way that they are delivering, teaching, troubleshooting, etc. And then we have educational coaching. And again, educational coaching is very similar. And here it's more about methodologies and solutions. And it's more about coming in as an agent of change. And it's more about integrating coaching practices. But again, mostly it's been done by coaches helping teachers to do this, maybe individually or group coaching. But it's not about the teacher transforming per se. Let's say it's more about them getting the information to then integrate the information. Now, what we are doing is different to that. We are actually training teachers to actually become the coach, instead of just giving the information to teachers to use coaching practices. So it's slightly deeper how we are doing it. Now, with the educational coaching, you have the TCC, teacher-centered coaching, and the SCC, student-centered coaching. And again, you've got a whole body of research looking at how actually it has an impact, and it enhances performance, it promotes ongoing improvement. And now this is about taking it that step further. Here you can see research from 2021 showing the benefits and impacts of a coaching and mentoring program in a secondary school. Here we see better ability to work in a more smarter way, better effectiveness, greater reflection, personal growth, more techniques being developed to help with children who are challenging or situations that are challenging, better energy and job satisfaction, that's quite interesting, and improved problem-solving skills. So quite a nice research study there from 2021. And here again, some more research showing the effects of educational and instructional coaching. I think this really comes into the question of why. Why are we using coaching, and why is it becoming, it's a worldwide phenomenon. It's not only now penetrating education, it really is penetrating all walks of life. We've seen that the International Coach Federation is already predicting that in the workplace, there is going to be a massive increase of coaching practices over the next 10 years. And I personally think it is going to impact education phenomenally. One of the reasons is that we know that the old systems are not working anymore. And Ollie, you've written that in the chat box. You know, it's a challenge to the old systems. We know that the old systems don't work anymore because of the technology that's coming in. Our brains have changed and the learners have changed. Children of today are different. We are different as adults, and as teachers, we're also different. And we're trying to navigate to understand how can we adapt to the new. And coaching is perfect for this because it helps us to modify the way that we communicate. And the way that we communicate is the key factor for everything that we do. So why use coaching? Well, let's come into a little bit of the research showing the impact. Terence Doyle is a neuroscientist. Actually, I have his book downstairs. I don't have it with me, but he has written about the science of learning. And he has this beautiful phrase, and for me, this captures everything. The one who does the work is the one who does the learning. Now we've moved, we always hear this, sage on the stage now becomes somebody who is involving the learner. So we're moving away from the Victorian figure of the teacher who says everything, does everything, and expects the learner to just absorb. Now we're moving into understanding that actually the learner has to do more. And coaching provokes that. It provokes the learner autonomy. And Sheldon and Kessler from the 1970s, 1980s, we have a lot of research from psychology demonstrating that when students, learners, all of us are self-regulating, when we are autonomous in what we do, we are demonstrating much more achievement of goals and positive outcomes. And if we go into recent research, this is from 2021, it's a Chinese university, I believe. They actually demonstrate that goal setting and self-regulation also promotes psychological well-being. This for me is one of the greatest adverts for coaching at the moment. this research paper. How and when goal-orientated self-regulation improves college students' well-being. Fantastic. So we're seeing that actually when we get people focused into what they want to achieve and we get them into this autonomous self-regulating process, they have better outcomes, plus it has a knock-on effect on their well-being. And by the way, there's some other research with French students where it shows it actually impacts on their performance. They are more self-disciplined, they can plan better, they get more self-confidence, they become more self-reliant. And that's exactly what we want as educators. Ingrid, you're saying that applied coaching in a learning environment can and will foster both the kids and the adults' awareness and metacognition. Yes, absolutely, absolutely. And this is the point. The kids of today are ready for this. We are the ones that are learning to do it. We're the ones that are having to catch up with them. We know as well that coaching promotes psychological safety, and we're going to be looking at this in one of the coach competences. We know that anxiety can cause prefrontal cortex, let's say, shutdown, fight or flight, going into that real affecting executive functions. And also the anxiety aroused by thinking about doing something, whether it's mathematics and language learning, I put into the same category as mathematics, actually can trigger the pain areas in the brain. The anterior cingulate cortex becomes triggered. So we need to know how to use coaching to keep that calm brain. And may I say that coaching also can provoke the flow state. For any Hungarians who are listening in the audience, please forgive me if my pronunciation is not perfect, but Csikszentmihalyi, the father of flow, the father of positive psychology, with all those characteristics of going into the flow. Now, a skilled coach will know how to provoke that state. And Ollie, you're saying you as a kid were ready for this 30 years ago and the system wasn't ready? Absolutely. Yes, and 30 to 50 years later, the system is not evolving as quick as the chips and the AI. Yes, yeah, I agree. I agree. And Ollie, I include myself in that, and I think most of you probably include yourself in that, that you were also independent, self-regulating, autonomous kiddies fighting the system. I know that I was very revolutionary at school, so I can imagine that some of you were too. And, you know, what I learned through life, I actually learned through my autonomous learning process. And I was very lucky that, and I'm going to say lucky because I actually left school at 16. And I was very lucky in the respect that my brother-in-law, who was a school teacher when I was aged 23, 24, he was the one that encouraged me to do the access to university, go back to university. And it was a long distance course. It was the UNED, it was the Universidad Nacional de Educación a Distancia. So it was a long distance study. And I had to do everything by myself. I had to learn how to learn. I had to study alone and check in with the tutors by myself. And that helped me and taught me to become an autonomous learner. So in my early 20s, went back to university, did all of my university studies and studied, many of you know I did a law, BA law in Spanish, then went on to do master's degrees, but all the way through, I was an autonomous learner. And that helped me to understand that actually we can help anybody to become an autonomous learner. And that's what you're doing. When you come into coaching, you are giving people back their power. You're empowering people. Here we have the research, which is demonstrating that non-directive coaching has an impact. And it really has an impact in the sense that it increases the frequency of creative insights. It also creates, influences the ideas, the creative ideas. So we know that non-directive coaching gets people into more alpha and theta and gamma waves. For those of you who understand brain waves, I know that my coaches do. As a coach, we're there to provoke these insights. And I'm going to say, as a learning coach, we're there to help them create these associative connections and insights with the learning. And non-directive coaching means not telling people what to do, getting them to set their own goals, getting them to become self-sufficient, self-regulating. But it also means that we are changing the style of communication. We are not directive. We're using a lot of permission along the way. So that's the reason why we're using coaching, because we see that there is a lot of impact. Now let's just have a walk around this topic. What is coaching? And I'm smiling because there are many definitions of coaching and everybody has their own perspective of coaching. And I'm going to say that they are all valid. But it's interesting for us to understand these different perspectives. We can't just attack each other and say, that's right, that's wrong, this is good, this is bad. We have to embrace all of the definitions of coaching. What is coaching? Well, let's start from the beginning. So it actually comes from the Hungarian. It is referring to a form of transport. Kocsi, I think, is the Hungarian word. And the form of transport is about getting somebody from A to B. Now, that's exactly what a coaching process should do. It should take somebody from this point to that point. It's a focus in the future and the point of destination arrival. 15th, 16th century in England, it was used for a tutor, a teacher, private tutor, by the way. Then we can go to the sports world. 19th century, 20th century, we have the figure of the sports coach. Now, the sports coach is interesting because I think the sports coach carries the essence, the spirit, the power of coaching, the philosophy of empowering you to get your goals, go beyond your limits, reach the impossible. One problem with the sports coach is they're normally very directive. Now, in the 1970s, we had the start of life coaching. It was actually born through the creation of the GROW model. Now, the GROW model was created by some consultants, and I think little did they know the impact that they were going to have on the world with this GROW model. The GROW model is goals, reality, obstacles, options, way forward. And a coaching model means that we have a pathway and we take our learner, our coachee, through that pathway. We take them through the goals. What's the reality? What's stopping you, blocking you? What could you do? Alternatives, and what's the way forward? Now, that's a coaching model. Now, this had great impact because it really gave rise to life coaching as a profession. And then in the 1970s, we saw this developing in the US, slowly coming over to the UK, I would say, end of the 80s, the 90s, the noughties. we have coaching in England. And now we see this worldwide wave of coaching impacting the whole world. Now, a lot of people think that this is negative because it's almost like a default profession. Everybody is becoming a coach. But I think it's about understanding that there are professional aspects which actually make professional coaching a skill. And professional coaches really are serving, helping, supporting people worldwide. What is life coaching? Well, life coaching is not about telling somebody what to do. And this is one of the major confusions. Coaching is not psychotherapy. It's not therapy. It's not mentoring. Normally, we are not sharing from our side. We're trying to provoke or assist our coachee to identify their goals, identify their limitations, identify what they want to achieve, identify what they want to learn, or maybe even to troubleshoot, brainstorm, create. And it's about us sitting and holding the space for them to do that, not doing it for them. So the philosophy of coaching is very much about empowering people to find their own solutions, their own way, their own creativity, and to be non-judgmental, absolutely neutral, accompanying them on that journey, managing the process, helping them when they get stuck. And when I say helping them, I don't mean literally giving them advice and telling them what to do. I mean sitting with them and troubleshooting with them, brainstorming with them, soundboarding. The most beautiful word to describe a coach is soundboard. I'm not sure if that exists in all of your languages, by the way, but hopefully it does. It gives you that feeling of what the coach is. Admittedly, nowadays, there are many different types of coaching, many different types of coaching. Coaching is everywhere. Life coaching, team coaching, intuitive coaching, business coaching, executive coaching, marital coaching, career coaching. I even hear spiritual coaching, health coaching, everything you can think of. And now, definitely, we're coming into language coaching. More and more, we're hearing language coaching. Now, as I said, it's not about psychotherapy. We are not there to sort out their psychological problems. It has nothing to do with psychology in that sense that is going into the past, going into events, and really helping somebody to heal or progress from life events. When you come into coaching, it is a future-orientated process. You are only getting people to identify where do you want to get to, where are you now, how do we get you there? That's the essence of coaching. Now, mentoring and counseling, normally you're offering your expertise. Now, I'm not saying that as a coach, you never give expertise. What I'm saying is we try to get it from them as much as we can. And if not, that's when we can come in with maybe some ideas. May I share with you to see if something resonates with you? And we give them maybe some input, but we're checking in with them first. Now, one of the major problems is that can anybody call themselves a coach? Yes. And there's nothing wrong with that. Anybody across the world can call themselves a coach. It is an unregulated profession. There is no good, no bad in calling yourself a coach or not. For me, the question is, what accreditations, what certifications, what credentials does that coach have to demonstrate professional coach training. That's where one of the differences is. But everybody is free to call themselves a coach. Can I just make a point here? Because interestingly and ironically, sports coaches then want to go to university to become a sports teacher. So they go from a coach to becoming a qualified, certified, accredited teacher. And we are doing it the opposite way. We are teachers who are then coming into calling ourselves coaches. So there seems to be a mirrored reflection there of an opposite, interestingly. Now, when we think about coach training, when we think about professionalism in the coach world, there are certain bodies setting out the standards, the professional guidelines, the ethics for coaching. And the most recognized worldwide is the International Coach Federation. The ICF was set up in the 90s. It is a non-profit organization. And it really has the focus and mission of professionalizing the coaching industry. And they have strived for gold excellence in coaching since the 1990s. Now, we are accredited by the ICF, so we do follow their guidelines, their ethics, their standards in everything. Sorry, I'm just coming back to the chat box. My chat box closed, and I can see that there's been some comments. So just let me come in. Ollie, yes. Autonomous learners, not to confuse with couching, yes. Just as an anecdote, when I was in Germany in 2012-13, when we started the business, the yellow pages in Germany actually called us efficient language couching. And we had to call them up and tell them, please change that word. So yes, it was a funny anecdote there. Soundboard, reflecteur, echo, yes, absolutely. Dr. Omar, coaching also involves giving advice. Actually, in the sense of the International Coach Federation, actually not. We are not there to give advice. Pure coaching is really about helping the learners to arrive to those aha moments by themselves. Now, there might be a moment where they're stuck, and maybe we can share some input, we can share some expertise, but with that sort of tentative, may I share, can I share something that I've experienced, and to see if that resonates with you, or if it could help you to trigger some ideas from your side. So yes, there can be input, but normally we are really trying to get them to reach their own opinions. Now, the ICF is worldwide recognized. It is setting the standards. They do have a program for credentialed coaches, and they do have accredited programs. Now, the credentialed coaches, you have the ACC, the Associate Certified Coach, the PCC, the Professional Certified Coach, and the Master Credentialed Coach. Now, I've gone through all the training of up to PCC. I'm now going deeper into training with coach supervision, mentoring coaches as well. So I'm continuing this evolution of going deeper and deeper into coaching and the coaching world. And it's interesting that the more you reflect, or the more you go higher on the level of deeper and deeper coaching and coaching skills, I'm even going to say the more silent we become as a coach. It's fascinating how we can really provoke those insights and get our learners to connect in with what they want to achieve. So how does all this come into the learning? Well, back in 2021, the ICF actually went through a whole process for a few years before, where they transformed the 11 core competences that they had before, and they streamlined them into these 8 core competences. Now, the interesting thing is that the foundation part, number 1 and number 2, demonstrating the ethical practice and embodying a coaching mindset, they reflect being a coach. So those are reflecting being. All of the other competences are reflecting doing. So you have a clear difference between the being a coach and doing your job, doing it, delivering it actively. Now, the ICF actually went through a lot of studies and a lot of meetings and surveys to come to streamline these competences. So they went through a lot of analysis of coach practice through the years to actually get to these as the key 8 core competences. Now, we're actually going to look at how we integrate these into neurolanguage coaching. And you'll see in each case, on the left, I've given you the competence from the ICF. And on the right, I've given you how we integrate this into what we are doing with language learning. And after each one, I'm going to give you a few extra comments to demonstrate how we're integrating it. Now, the first one is very much about the ethics, the ethical standards, the ethical practice. And we really are demonstrating that integrity, the honesty. We really are embracing the identity of our learners, our clients. We're embracing their beliefs, their values, their experiences. We're taking into account the code of ethics, the core values, and definitely we are voicing confidentiality. In a learning process, we are sharing with our learners that everything that they talk about will be confidential. Now, if you think about this in some respects, if you're working with learners, young learners, or if you're working with teenagers, even if you're working with company employees, on the one side, we are saying to them that any content of those sessions will be confidential. We may need to share about the level of learning, the progress of learning, and we're really going to establish that with our clients. Quite a few years ago, I had a top executive from a bank in Paris. And we had this, obviously, engagement because human resources wanted us to come together. Human resources forced her to have these sessions because they were troubleshooting her linguistic abilities. Actually, when I came into that first session with her as a diagnostic, she was brilliant. She really was a C1 level with no mistakes. So for me there was that question, well, what is the reason then that human resources have sent you here? Now, quite a few company sensitive, let's say, bits of information came out. And I shared with my client that everything that we talked about would be confidential, and that we needed to then set up the goals, set up the process, and that is what would be shared with human resources. And that's exactly what we did. We set up goals, we set up actions, and then we worked towards those goals, reporting back to HR. But anything that came out as content in those sessions, my client knew. My direct client was my learner. My client knew that everything was going to be confidential. So it's about sitting with the client and really helping them to understand this. Even if you're with children, helping them understand actually is going to provide them with trust, safety in that moment that they're with you. Now, we also need to understand the difference between psychotherapy, therapy, mentoring, etc. And we have to be very clear right from the beginning, explaining to our client, we are not here to tell you what to do. We're not here to give you advice. We're not here to consult, give psychotherapy, give mentoring advice. We're here in that quality of being a coach, a soundboard. If at any point we feel that there is a gray line coming in and our client is displaying, let's say, issues that belong to the therapeutic field, we need to refer our clients to another professional. Now, in language coaching, when you think about language coaching, it has to do with the enhancing, improvement, and learning of a language. It's not life coaching. It's not business coaching. It's not executive coaching. It is to learn a language. So when we integrate coaching into language learning, we have to keep the focus that the focus is actually the language learning. And we're using coaching as a communicative tool, as a troubleshooting tool, as a way of delivery. And if at any point a personal question is rising, we have to then ask our clients to maybe consult a different professional. Now, if it's something to do with the language learning, like confidence issues, delivering a presentation, or learning issues, or emotional issues because of a bad learning memory at school that's blocking and hindering the learning of the language, then we are going to be troubleshooting that with coaching conversations. Again, it has to be connected to the language. Now, I do think as well, it's about having the clarity of the differences. And here is a table that I came into in 2016-17. It's in the first book that I wrote. Now, I think as well, it's about being very clear about what is teaching and what is coaching. And here you can see that we're shifting into active learning, taking on board motivation, commitment, responsibility, ownership. We're really coming into equal status. We're keeping the style of directiveness out of the classroom. We're going into non-directive, and we're really looking at how to maximize the potential of each learner. Now, I know that many, many teachers and educators today are moving into this left side of coaching. I know that many teachers intuitively are moving over to that side. And I also want to say that I think it's also about understanding the differences between the different types of language coaches. In November, my third book was published. And in this book, I clarify all the different types of language coaches, and no judgment whatsoever. Each and every one of these are valid in their own right, but they're different. Now, the first ones are the ones who are language teachers using the word coach and using that empowering style, possibly directive, like a sports coach. So they are picking up the philosophy and the spirit of the sports coach. The second type are language teachers or educators with lots of years of experience. Maybe we could say the godfathers of language learning, and they're using this expertise and they're calling themselves a coach, and it's an intuitive style of coaching that they're developing or delivering. Then we have the ones who have a life coaching qualification, and they are using that knowledge, integrating it into the process. Now, here I would say sometimes there's a gray line between life coaching and language coaching. For me, this is the one that really needs to understand when they are a life coach, when they're a language coach, what are they integrating into the process. Next level, you have coaching courses, which are offering the techniques and the models to use and enhance the learning. And they carry certifications, but maybe not accreditations. And then we are the ones that are carrying the CPD, the accreditation from the ICF, and we are fully integrating everything from coaching into the language learning process. So we are the soundboard, we are promoting the self-regulation, we are integrating the neuroscience and the emotional intelligence. That's a different branch of what we're doing. And it's all woven in to how we deliver the language learning. The structure changes, the delivery changes, everything changes. So those are the different types. And I think it's about understanding the different categories. Competence number 2. This is my favorite. This is about embodying a coaching mindset. So this is about acknowledging clients responsible for their own choices. And this is learner autonomy. The learners setting the goals. In neurolanguage coaching, our learners set the goals. It's quite interesting. I'm going to smile a little bit here because a month ago I had somebody call me. They wanted a call with me. And this particular person was saying, I do a lot of this and I intuitively do it. But the thing I don't understand is how to get the learners to set the goals. And in the phone call, she wanted me to explain to her how we do it. And obviously, I invited her to come onto the course because it's a whole process. It's not just a phone call of this is how you do it. It's actually embodying a whole process of how to do it. So yes, we get our learners to set their goals, we get them to set the actions, we get them to set the time period, and we go into that ongoing learning and we go into the ongoing reflective practice. Now, remember, this is about being the coach here. It's about using the intuition. It's about using our coaching mindset. Many of you probably know Carol Dweck, growth mindset. I know recently there's been research that disclaims that, but actually coaching is about empowering people. But it's not only about the coach empowering and the coachee learning, it's also about us continuing our learning journey. And it's about us being mentally prepared. It's about us understanding how to maintain and regulate our emotions. And it's about us getting help from outside if we're struggling. So that's the being of coaching. Now, one thing about being a coach is the impact of words. It's about the self-awareness of how we communicate. It's about understanding that the words that we choose have an impact. It's about helping people to understand that the words that they choose, the focus that they have, has an impact of the brain as well. So negative words can contribute to stress and long-term anxiety. From the research, we know that. Do words hurt? Yes, they do. And words can change your brain. This beautiful book by Newberg and Waldman, do have a look at it, which talks about how words can actually either cause stress, or positive words can have an impact on activating other areas of the brain. Virginia, yes, the competence of embodying the coaching mindset is the way we do one thing is the way we do everything. Yes, absolutely. And you know, it's interesting because when you start to modify the way that you communicate with learners, it overflows into everyday life. You discover that you transform the way you communicate with everybody. And we're looking at the power of words, the powerful questions, the active listening, compassionate conversations, positive feedback, calm presence. And obviously the calm presence is going to have an impact. Mirror neurons have an impact. Now, it is about understanding empathy and compassion. It is about not getting lost in our emotions. If we have a client who is struggling with their emotions, how can we help them to get through that? It's about understanding the neuroscience of empathy and compassion. Empathy, we're lighting up the pain and reward circuits of the brain and the mirror neurons. So we're really coming into that, I feel what you feel. But compassion is about taking that next step to say, how can I help? And compassion then is triggering the part of the brain which is called the periaqueductal gray, which is then triggering the vagus nerve. And that is then highlighting, or I'm going to say triggering the love circuits of the human who wants to help, who wants to make a difference. And the way that we communicate has to move into the direction of more and more compassion. And that means also that we are reacting less and we are acting more into that position of how can we help? What needs to happen? You're redirecting their focus from, I'm really sorry this is happening. What needs to change here? Remember, coaching is future orientated, goal orientated. Number 3, coaching competence number 3. This is an interesting one because it is actually about agreements. And in neurolanguage coaching, we are very much demonstrating those agreements. We're demonstrating the clarity of the process. We're bringing in the contract, if you like. We're bringing in the certainty all the way through. Now, the ICF competence actually means there are 3 levels of agreement. And we follow each of these. The first level is the contract before you start. And normally, as a professional, we're offering a service and we are bringing out that written agreement before we start. Now, the next level of agreement is actually the goals and the actions that the client sets and agrees to work towards. And the third level of agreement is that we know exactly what we're going to do in every single session. We, the coach, go away and we create a program which is personalized to each and every learner according to their goals and actions. And that's the third level, that our client has certainty on every single level. Not only certainty, but clarity as well. And in that way, we are satisfying this requirement of establishing the coaching agreement with the learner. And we are offering a service, you know, Coaching is a service industry. We're shifting education out of that sort of traditional learning establishment into we're offering you a service here. And that means coaching agreements. It means coaching around issues. It means confidentiality. It means goal setting, action setting, motivation, commitment, managing the whole process with time periods and goal reviews. So it becomes a holistic delivery of service. ICF competence number 4, trust and safety. Psychological trust and safety all the way through. We have to create a safe learning environment. Now, this is something that we've never really thought of before. By the way, tomorrow in the webinar, tomorrow morning, we'll be looking at emotional regulation in the classroom. And this is very much the topic here. How can we create that safety? How can we understand more about fight or flight and how to calm learners who have been emotionally triggered? And, you know, language learning must be one of the most daunting things to learn for many, many people. We normally say it's mathematics, but for many people, I think language learning is even worse than mathematics. And it always depends on the teacher, the trainer, the coach, the educator. So the more that we can become conscious of how to create that safety, how to offer constant support, how to respect them, find out what they want, understand them, really celebrate the success, give the compassion, acknowledge the emotions, bring out the honesty, build up the trust, and also coach them when they need that coaching. And this is key for any learning, I believe. We are conscious about the way we speak. So we've already said that changing the way we speak can also help them. You know, we mentioned earlier about non-directive coaching. Just by changing with permission instead of directives calms people down. You know, many times when we talk about this, using permission questions, may I ask you to do this? Could we look at that? May we look at this now? How about we move on to the next part, or let's look at these goals? Just by doing that, we are keeping them calm, but we're also opening the door to their learner autonomy. Remember, by asking them, may we do this, they could actually choose to say, well, could we do something else? Or I haven't quite understood this, so could we do it again? And learner autonomy, remember, is everything that we're trying to promote in coaching. Ina, yes. Does that mean there's an outline of every session from the very beginning? Absolutely, yes. And I'm going to say that in neurolanguage coaching, we really create certainty by having that outline for every single session. May it move along the way? Yes, it might become, let's say, it might morph, because there might be things that are arising, things that come up, things that need dealing with. But more or less what we're doing from the beginning is saying, these are your goals, these are your actions, and this is the schedule I've created to embrace what you've told me you want to work on. But definitely there might be that sort of dance in the background where it's becoming a little bit mobile. Yes, Virginia, having that flexible outcome creates certainty. Let's go back, everybody, to what we started this webinar with. We started the webinar with the rigid side of teaching and the flexible side of coaching. And this is here where you can see that we're marrying them together. And we do have the spontaneity together with the structure in the background. Now, coming back to safety, psychological safety, we understand how to keep them calm. We understand how to actually push them into a reward state. And this is key. That if I know that something is triggering my learner, how can I help them to recover from that and even move into a positive brain state? How can I demonstrate my active listening, my presence, my coaching presence? How can I get them curious? Dopamine production when they're curious. How can I acknowledge them and really be conscious of the words that I'm using? So all of that will help with that psychological safety. And coming into powerful questions to coach around triggers, coach around troubleshooting issues, maybe learning issues. All of that is going to help keep them calm. Coaching competence number 5, maintaining coaching presence. It is really our mission to help our learners stay focused. If that's the goal they want to go to, we have to know how to keep them focused to get them there. And to help them along the way have that curiosity, have that sort of stimulation to come up with associations, connections, aha moments. And I do think here, this is where we may have a little bit of a dance between teaching and coaching. Now, teaching is about transferring information. It's about inputting information. And when we do that with a coaching approach, it actually raises the curiosity, and it also stimulates people sometimes to even get there by themselves. And especially in language learning. Language learning is about scaffolding. It's about previous knowledge. We know from 2016, there is a research which was performed in the Netherlands, an investigation about when we learn a new language. Actually, what happens when we learn a new language, our brain is going to the native grammar structures first. And in this sense, the more that we can provoke those connections. Now, I'm not saying that we should be speaking native all the time. What I'm saying is we need to be stimulating and provoking those connections. How is that in your language? How is it different? How is it similar? Where are the differences? Where are the similarities? Let's talk it through. And this stimulation, honestly, it's incredible because people get instant aha moments and they instantly get it and they never forget it. And we're bringing in the silence as well. You know, as I said earlier, the more deeper you go into coaching skills, the more silent that we become as a coach. It's quite fascinating how silence really helps people to think. And we don't do it enough as teachers. We're not used to it. We don't like it. We're not comfortable with it. What we forget is that those silent moments are giving our learner space to think. And every single one of us has a different thinking time. Some people may need more, some people may need less. What we have to do is discover what does that learner need that's sitting in front of me. So curiosity arousing, well, you know, the more curiosity, the more dopamine production. And dopamine actually is produced with playful learning, novelty, variety, fun, reward, praise, positivity, and of course, curiosity. Just as an additional, the more dopamine in the prefrontal cortex when we're learning, the more connections per second. So it's worthwhile provoking that curiosity. And tapping into their motivation, coaching presence, what is their vision? What are they going to use this learning for? Where do they see themselves using this language knowledge? What could it change in their lives? What doors could it open for them? Now, if you tap into passion, drive, vision, they've got commitment as well. One of my ladies the other day, one of our coaches, I don't think she's here today. She wrote to me to say that one of her clients who was learning Hungarian had actually gone on holiday and was on his holiday still doing homework. That's commitment. Yes. And I said to her, wow, you obviously tapped into his inner vision. And even on his holidays, he's sitting there doing his Hungarian homework. How brilliant is that? And obviously, we're looking for SMART goals. The more specific, the more measurable. We cannot accept, I want to be fluent as a goal anymore, because we've no idea what it means. We've no idea how to measure that. Probably it would take us years to be able to measure that fluency. So the more specific we can make it, I want to be able to give my opinion. That's specific. Let's get you into that focused conversation of giving opinions, agreeing, disagreeing. And then we can measure after a certain time whether you can actually do that or not. So specific means more measurable, has to be realistic, attainable, and there must be a time period. Coaching is about working together towards a time period, and at the end of that time period, we sit down and we do a goal review. And that's coming out in Competence 8, by the way. And giving feedback. Coaching presence means that we know how to celebrate their success. We know how to acknowledge them, recognize them. And I don't just mean well done for the work. I mean, I'd love to recognize you for the time you've taken. I'd love to recognize you for the effort you've put into this. Thank you for that. So those moments of recognition are also part of that coaching presence. Coach competence number 6, active listening. Many teachers, many people say that they are good listeners. One of the problems that we have is that we're not aware of our own brain activity. Because most of the time when we're listening, our brain starts kicking in with our own thoughts. We start thinking of what we're going to say, what we're going to ask. And when that happens, we're not fully listening. Now, as a coach, we have to sit and fully listen. We have to quieten down our own brain activity to hear everything and take it on board. And one of the things that we do as a coach is to reflect, summarize, reformulate back before we move on with our questions, our comments, our input. Christina, you're saying, sorry, I'm just going to come into the chat box there. When they refer to fluency, you ask them to describe how the fluency looks like, and you offer them a scale. Yes. The problem is that if you could make that more concrete into what types of conversations, that will help them as well. So you can measure their fluency on a scale and then squeeze them into really specific goals relating to the language itself. Yes. Yeah, it's so difficult to measure, and it's so subjective. Because when we're sitting with people who sound fluent, they probably mark themselves down. And that's also another problem, that people never believe that they are as good as they are. So yes, I agree with that. And Virginia, the insight about motivation. Your Chinese learners of English show remarkable commitment, but you wonder if it's motivation, obligation, or both. Yes, maybe it could be a coaching conversation to have with the learner, and really see if it's connecting into that inner vision of what they're going to be doing with the Chinese. How is it going to change their life once they're fluent? Where's it going to take them? What doors is it going to open? And that using that as their golden, let's say, future, and see if that's connecting in with the commitment or not. But yes, it's an interesting question, definitely. Yeah. Okay, listening actively. Now, we've already said that as a coach, we reformulate back. We're also paying attention to the words that they're using. So often we're using keywords back with them. And when we're really trying to sense energy changes, when they're having aha moments, when they're having insights, when they're connecting in with the language, we're trying to see how we can get them to ride on that knowledge that they've just come into. And we are also going to be paying attention to how we contribute. For example, we're not going to be finishing off sentences anymore. We're going to be listening to them. We're going to be allowing them the space. We mentioned this a minute ago, the space to think, to reflect, and then to come out with their own answers. Remember here what Terence Doyle said, the one who does the work is the one who does the learning. If I'm always jumping in and doing it for them, if I'm finishing off their sentences, if I'm telling them what to do, if I'm stimulating, but only because I'm putting in the input, they are not doing it. So we have to quieten down brain activity. We have to reformulate back. And by the way, reformulation is a brilliant language repetition tool. When you reformulate back, they are hearing it again. And if you reformulate back using different words, you're also stimulating that for them with synonyms and alternatives. So reformulation is a beautiful language learning tool that we can use as a coach, much, much more than we are doing. So that's the active listening. Now, the coach competence number 7, by the way, before it used to be called powerful questions. Now they've called it evoking awareness. And actually, I love this because we are constantly evoking. We're constantly challenging, provoking, asking the right questions. We're going into very direct communication. We're getting them to reflect on their progress, getting them to become aware, and really getting them to give themselves their own feedback. So powerful questions, as a coach, they come with practice. They really do. Just to share with all of you, you know, it's about 20 years ago that I started my own journey into coaching as a professional coach. And the first coach training that I did as a learner to be a baby coach, I was absolutely shocked at how many closed questions I was using. Every single question that was coming out of my mouth was closed. Do you, could you, would you, have you? Do you, could you, would you, have you? Closed questions all the time. Now, I think language teachers, trainers, educators, we have this habit of asking closed questions. And the reason we do it is because we don't want them to suffer. Well, actually, that's counterproductive of what we want to do. We want to get them talking. We don't want to close their brain into yes, no, yes, no, yes, no. But we have to modify the way that we ask the questions. And to modify the way that we ask the questions, we have to become conscious of them. Every single question that comes out of my mouth, I have to have control over it. I have to know if I want to ask an open question or closed question and when to do what. And Christina, you're saying about the Duolingos. They speak with many, many mistakes, but when you ask them to write down what they've just said, they change it and write everything in a correct way. Yes, yes, yeah, I agree with you there. Yeah, yeah, Duolingo is quite interesting, and it's interesting how people are taking in language subconsciously through AI, through these programs, through the apps. And then when they get to us, it's almost like we've got this eclectic language in their brain, which we are then sort of seeing. How can we channel this into normal language? And that's your mission now. And this is also the mission of the coach, to come into that individual with their eclectic language level and to help that individual get the basics in the right place and then build them up. Now, open questions are key, because open questions will stimulate them to think. What and how? So instead of do you, what do you? How do you? Now, the other habit that we have, unfortunately, is firing out many questions at a time. I think this is going to be your mission, everybody, after today's webinar, to really watch yourselves, observe yourselves asking questions. How many questions are you asking at a time? How can you make that one question at a time and an open question, unless you really want to pinpoint to a yes-no answer? Observe your questions. And as we said earlier in coaching, lots of permission questions. May I ask you, how about? Keep them calm. And the more you go into open questions, the less they are going to be leading or judgmental. A leading question could be, could we look at this slide and then after a few minutes, we'll open up a discussion. And if you're all happy with that, then we'll move on to the next one. Actually, that's a closed question, and I'm just telling you that's what we're going to do. I'm asking you more or less to say yes. I'm leading you into that answer because I know you're not going to say no. And as teachers, we're always doing this. We're leading them instead of saying, okay, how are you feeling about this? How would you like to consolidate this part? What would you like to do at this point? Open questions. And the dangerous, do you think question. Do you think that's a good idea? Could sound very judgmental. What do you think about this idea? Opens it up. So try to become conscious of do you think and the closed questions. And as well, moving away from the why. Why is great if you're going to be asking objective or neutral things, like why does the sun rise in the east? Why does water freeze at 0 degrees? But as soon as you ask why for something that's personal or emotional, you're going to get a defensive emotional response, because it really does come into the emotional receptors. Why did you say that? Your learner may then go into that fight or flight. Now, one thing that we can use instead of why in these particular types of questions is, what is the reason? What's the reason for saying that? I'm really curious. And that way I'm staying curious as a coach, And I'm asking my client to rationalize and analyze what they said, not to feel the emotional heat of it. What's the reason for choosing that word? I'm really curious about that. And you will get a totally different response from the learner. And far-reaching questions, definitely. How do you want to work on this? Where do you see yourself using this? Going into those deeper questions with feelings, emotions, visions in the learning. Christina, thank you. Take care and all the best there in Taiwan. Finally, everybody, we're coming into coach competence number 8, facilitating client growth. Now, there is a lot in here because we have goal setting, action setting, accountability, supporting learner autonomy, the results, goal reviews, summarizing the learning, keeping them on track, celebrating achievements, and understanding when the learning process has come to an end. Before, this used to be covered over 2 or 3 of the competences, and now they've streamlined it into one. Everything that we do in coaching is about client growth. And when you transport that into learning, learning is about growth. Learning is about neuroplasticity. And everything that we're doing as a coach is supporting, facilitating, assisting, soundboarding, helping people to achieve the learning that they want to learn. Bearing in mind that the person doing it learns it. So that is the integration. We're setting the goals, we're getting into specific goals. The coachee sets the goals, the coachee takes responsibility, the coachee decides the time period and comes into that goal review. And the coachee also decides on the actions. In learning, actions mean activities. What activities do they want to do to really achieve these goals? And we get all of the information from them. And to facilitate growth, we may be using those coaching models. We may use the GROW model, as we said earlier. And I have, in fact, created a few more models for the learning process. The FEW model is to fact find and move them forward, to move them out of drama, to get them focused onto learning solutions. The FREE model is to really help them navigate negative emotions, bad situations, and get them into empowering and involving, moving forward. And we even have coaching conversations around the grammar, and this is with the PACT PQC model. Now, the PACT PQC is also not only for grammar, but also for non-grammar. It's a model that I've created which keeps us in the coaching mode. Even when we are transferring knowledge, even when we're teaching, when we're introducing new information, we're doing it in a coaching style, non-directive, involving the learner. And that involvement helps them to really make those connections fast. Now, the PACT PQC is signposting, finding out what they know. When they don't know something, moving into that teach, which is non-directive, moving them into the practice conversation, powerful questions along the way. And when we need to, we clarify. And this skeleton conversation in the background really helps them to feel like they're in a coach process, not in a teaching process. Now, professional coaching in this respect is changing learning conversations. And if we just summarize this, we are bringing in these elements from professional coaching. We're bringing in the structure, goals, actions, goal review. We're bringing in the spirit, empowering, unleashing potential. We're bringing in the impact, learner autonomy, self-regulated learning, motivation, commitment, and we're bringing in coach impact. No judgment, involving, accompanying, soundboarding, and we're bringing in the accountability as well. Coaching is about coach and coachee both accountable. And that is the summary of everything that we are bringing in from the professional coach world. I always say that when you transform into being a coach, you know, when you really transform the way that you communicate, the way that you deliver, once a coach, always a coach. And integrating coaching and neuroscience into language coaching, we are constantly with the competences in the background, the ethics, the structure. We also integrate the neuroscience with knowledge about how the brain works and learns and reacts. We implement the research from the neuroscience relating to how we learn best. So we're integrating the science of learning into the process. And we're also talking to learners. We're bringing out those conversations with learners about how they learn and how the brain reacts and functions. We have our own models within neurolanguage coaching, and we really come into that road mapping and chunking down all the way through. You know, in the end, I always refer back to Einstein, and I think many of us nowadays are coming back into this. It really is the training of the mind. Everything that we are now moving towards in education is helping our learners to train themselves, to regulate themselves, to manage their own emotions. Can you imagine a world where children are really able to do this, and how they will grow up to be adults who are self-regulating? And wow, I would love to see how that world will look in 20 years' time. And definitely teachers who are neurolanguage coaches, well, I do think they are masters in goal setting, masters and mistresses, can we say, in goal setting, non-directive, non-demonstrative. They are really coming in as catalysts, facilitators, sounding boards. They're very structured in the way that they do things. And the training course to become a neurolanguage coach, it is in fact a 36-hour course, which is accredited by the ICF. We are now just over 1,500 neurolanguage coaches. I was counting the other day. I think we're in about 86 different countries across the world. Some of you are here today, so thank you for being here today. And we offer the free webinars, the workshops. We have the professional network. You know, the network of neurolanguage coaches, I have to say, are phenomenally connected in the sense of helping each other. And really the mindset, the like-mindedness, and the helping each other with work, even spilling work to each other, is phenomenal. So I do want to say to the network, thank you, because you really are, I know you're helping each other a lot across the world. And we are now full steam ahead with the NeuroHeart Education Foundation. If you want to have a look on the LinkedIn posts over the last days, I have posted about the foundation. We are launching a non-profit organization which is offering courses to teachers worldwide. And the courses have 3 different pillars. One pillar is changing the way that we teach. So soft skills, enhancing with coaching, neuroscience, positive psychology, all of those sorts of things to help modify the way that we are teaching. Second pillar is dedicated to teacher well-being. And the third pillar is dedicated to student well-being. And those courses will be offered by many of our teacher trainers. Some of you are here today, and offered in many different languages as well.